Francesca Hong, thank you so much for joining with me today.
Absolutely, happy to be here.
Absolutely. So I do want to start with kind of getting your reaction to the news of David Crowley this last weekend, getting back into the race. There's a lot of people who online and just in general are claiming that this is the establishment kind of trying to put their thumb on the scale to make sure that you're not the nominee. How do you feel about that?
I feel like voters should have the say, that the election belongs to the voters. And voters for months since we've launched the campaign have been growing excited about our campaign. And we're excited and staying focused on having our message on permanent affordability continue to reach voters across the state.
Why do you think some in the Democratic Party feel like you can't win in the general election, and why Republicans feel like they can win against you over anyone else?
No one knows who is going to win. Anyone could win this race. And the person who is most electable is the person who earns the most votes. And right now, I also think it's important to earn the trust of voters, to earn excitement, to earn engagement. And we're going to continue to work to earn all of those things as we continue to build our ground game. We have a goal of knocking over 500,000 doors, one of the largest ground operations for a campaign, and continue to meet communities where they are.
Where are you at with that goal right now? 500,000 doors, that's lofty.
We have now till August 11th. I'll check in with my organizing director and let you know, but we've already hit tens of thousands just one GOTV weekend not too long ago.
Well, as I just told you, I'm kind of new to the area, and one of the first things that I heard about you when you got into the race is that you said, abolish police, abolish prisons. What do you say to folks who hear that and maybe are cautious with some of your policy stances?
We have to be serious about public safety, that we have not fully invested in the things that we know prevent crime. I'm serious about lowering crime, in justice for victims, and ensuring that we have safer communities because everyone deserves to feel safe. Fully funding our public schools, great out-of-school programs, lowering recidivism rates, making sure that we have mental health resources, that we're funding resources to help with the opioid epidemic. Our law enforcement and correctional officers are having to respond to crime. Lowering crime means being tough on causes before being tough on crime.
So you don't think police need to be abolished?
It would be irresponsible to it would be deeply irresponsible to do that without having the systems of care right now. I believe that we need to be serious about safety, and I'm not here to govern by slogans.
What does criminal justice reform for you look like then?
Lowering those recidivism rates, making sure that both the people who are working within our prison systems and the folks who are incarcerated, 90% of folks who are incarcerated will come back into community. How can we make sure that there are job opportunities, mental health resources? But again, that initial investment of mental health resources, investing in public health. We have defunded our local governments for the past 16 years and not providing adequate shared revenue for essential services in public health, fire and EMS, and we've underfunded our schools for the last 16 years, actually I would argue longer. So when we make public investments in things that we know help to prevent crime, where there's access to healthcare, good jobs with benefits, where communities aren't pit against one another, but we're making sure that there's opportunities for folks. The way that we have been investing billions of dollars into this system has not provided the results in safer communities. So reinvesting in community, in our kids, and making sure that we are lowering incarceration rates and investing in healing and care, this is what the current system demands.
So do you think things like drug court or systems while people are incarcerated is a solution to rehabilitation?
There has to be reform there as well, and making sure that we have we have to end juvenile life in sentencing. We still sentence juveniles to life in prison in our state. We are behind in the state of, we shouldn't be behind Texas in anything when it comes to criminal justice reform, and yet we are behind when it comes to sentencing guidelines. I think that right now, rehabilitation, investment in mental health resources, in looking at how not only outdated but inefficient the current investments in the system are in producing the actual results in making sure communities are safer and in that individuals are ready to be productive members of society. It costs us more to incarcerate one individual in our state than it does for 1 year of college tuition at UW-Madison.
So what do you say to victims' families, though? Say the perpetrator was a 17-year-old and they killed 2 of their family members or something like that. You're saying they don't deserve life in prison. What's your message to those that maybe are concerned that they don't get the justice that they feel their family member would deserve?
I want justice for victims. We do not have victim resources right now inadequate. We do not fund the programs that help families with finding additional resources. I think that right now, as I mentioned earlier, that ensuring that there are victim services, that we have fair processes and due process for all, these are things that we need to improve in and that I want to make investments in.
But what about they want to see that person incarcerated because of the crime that they committed? Say they killed someone and they're 17 years old. You don't think that person belongs in jail for the rest of their life?
That is an individual case that would be decided in court. I certainly want there to be justice for victims, and I think that right now our system has prosecution and there is certainly it is not for me to say and make that sentencing decision for a potential scenario like that. I think right now what we are talking about is making sure that victims have resources and that there is a justice system that honors that.
So when you're saying, though, I just want to be clear that I understand this, you don't think that people under the age of 18 should be getting life sentences, correct?
We should be ending life in sentencing without parole.
Okay, even when the kid's 17 and kills people, or?
I think that is an individual case that right now the system has where where that individual court case, the judge makes a decision, and that is the system we have right now for that individual. But for someone's life to be decided without, a life sentence without parole for a juvenile, I think is one that we have to revisit.
I want to move on. You went on 2 podcasts that some felt were controversial. Others watch those streamers religiously and appreciate some of the things that they say. What do you say to people who feel you appearing on those podcasts is being sympathetic to folks who sometimes say some anti-Semitic things?
I am not an anti-Semite. Deeply love and respect the Jewish community. I do not endorse everything that every news station, streamer, or platform has presented or shared. And I think that if individuals who go on a platform is to be held responsible for everything a streamer has said, I hope that we are asking the same of Congressman Tiffany, who went on Dan O'Donnell's show when he called for the execution of Governor Walz.
You want to expand Badger Care. How do you want to do this when there's less federal funding coming in due to the Big Beautiful Bill?
We currently have a partial expansion of Medicaid and capturing as many federal dollars as possible and expanding eligibility for Medicaid. We have to explore every single option possible to have more affordable, high-quality healthcare available for more people here in Wisconsin. We are seeing ACA subsidies, those cuts, as well as premium prices go up again. It would be irresponsible not to explore every single healthcare option to be able to offer Wisconsinites, especially as we see the harms of the Big Beautiful Bill come down.
What are some options that you think would work to maybe expand tax revenue to invest into the expansion of Badger Care?
Well, the expansion of Badger Care plus investing in a public option, looking at bringing in additional revenue dollars, whether that's in eliminating tax exemptions for things like data centers, where sales and use tax exemption adds up to almost $2 billion a year, looking at new sources of revenue that can come in from decriminalizing cannabis, to ensuring that we are closing tax loopholes and we don't have a system where some of our smallest small business owners are paying a higher tax rate than some of the largest corporations that are paying little to no tax rates, or no taxes, or same with our lowest income earners who are paying a higher tax rate than some of our highest tax income earners. We can not only expand the tax base by making our state more attractive, by having more options for affordable health care and for fully funding schools, but taxing the billionaires and the ultra rich, making corporations pay their fair share. These are all responsible economic policies to ensure that we can actually grow the economy.
And do you think that those steps will stop the closure of some hospitals? I know that was on your website, something that you're focused on. It's not only a problem here, it's a problem across the country, especially in more rural communities.
Absolutely. We have to invest in rural healthcare initiatives and ensure that we are taking on consolidation and looking at ways to enforce our anti-monopoly laws here in our state.
You've also called for a moratorium on data centers. What would that look like, first and foremost? And then what do you say to folks who, say this is the economic boom of the time that we're living in and we're going to prevent business from happening in the state if we put this moratorium in place?
The moratorium on the construction of new hyperscale AI data centers would be in place until the enforcement mechanisms and laws that protect ratepayers, that protect our natural resources, and ensure that there can be local control that has a transparent process where there are legal services provided, that the local economies are protected, and that there's both short-term and long-term investment that is guaranteed. We cannot govern based on promises. We cannot be Foxconned again. Many of these companies are operating on borrowed money and going into taking our state in a time of great financial turmoil and risk with what's happening at the federal government. It would be irresponsible to move forward with these larger projects without the enforceable mechanisms in place in statutes.
What are some of those enforceable mechanisms in statute that you would like to see?
Well, no NDAs. Making sure that there are clear guidelines in investment in renewable clean energy, and making sure that data centers are paying their way if they're going to be building here in Wisconsin, and that the work that is done by our construction workers, that the jobs created are good union jobs.
You've said that you want to provide permanent affordability. What do you feel like the key policy is for you that could create that affordability that I think Wisconsinites and Americans are craving right now?
Healthcare, education, housing, and food are basic human rights. And when we talk about permanent affordability, it's ensuring that everyone has access to a good job, which comes with raising our current minimum wage of $7.25 an hour to a $15 an hour with a path to $20. It's ensuring that we have healthcare that is affordable and available through a public option and expanding Medicaid. It's affordable housing that is made permanent by ensuring that we actually have a public bank that can ensure low interest financing to build more affordable housing, and that when it comes to education, we meet our constitutional obligation to ensure that every child has access to a high quality public education by funding our schools.
What does a public bank look like? Because I feel like folks on the other side of the aisle really don't like this idea.
Well, I like the idea of low interest loans that help some of our smallest businesses not only sustain, but be able to grow and scale their business, maybe even open a new location, that this will help revitalize our rural main streets, that young entrepreneurs who are looking to open a new business have access to capital that isn't from a financial institution that is focused solely on profit over sustaining our local and state economies. I think that this public bank would be run, of course, by financial experts in the banking industry from the private sector, And it would give our farmers an opportunity to access financing, especially in a time where tariffs and costs continue to rise, and we are fighting in ag as well. Our farmers are fighting consolidation and big ag and monopolizing of pricing. And so North Dakota has had a public bank that not only helps to make for more financial business opportunities, but helps with, in times of COVID, and allocating resources to communities and businesses is a much more efficient system.
And would the initial investment in this public bank, it would come from the state, or how would that work?
Yes, we can look at expanding agencies like the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and moving that from a pseudo-governmental agency into one that actually is committed with additional revolving loan funds, moving that to actually having loans approved through loans that are administered through the state.
Tax the rich, it's a term that's very common amongst DSA candidates and very popular with the working class. How do you still make a favorable business environment and convince, wealthy folks and businesses to come here to create jobs if you're going to raise their taxes?
It's important that we make Wisconsin a place that is attractive and we can grow our tax base and keep the workers that we have here, because it is the workers who make the economy, and businesses rely on a strong, stable workforce for their own bottom line. There's very little data to show that large corporations are, we have low business tax rates here in our state, and we haven't been able to grow our larger manufacturing or middle manufacturing sector. And I think if you look at investments in childcare, housing, public schools, local government, local infrastructure, lowering utility costs, that gives us opportunities to expand businesses by attracting more workers to be able to live and work in a community that they can afford, that they can thrive in, that they want to continue to raise a family in. So it's about tax fairness and ensuring that some of our lower income earners aren't paying higher tax rates than some of our highest income earners, and that the manufacturing agricultural tax credits that are giving corporations little to no tax rate, that if we look at adjusting or eliminating those, that we're giving our small business communities. 99% of the businesses in Wisconsin are small businesses. This is about fairness to stabilize the economy.
How do you plan to fully fund schools while also lowering people's property taxes, which are a huge concern for folks across the state?
Absolutely. So this past year, I introduced legislation that would put an increase the tax rate for income earners that make that $1 million income level. It would create that tax bracket and a 1% increase to the billionaire, and give local option tax increase for local governments, the option for local taxing authorities that would help lower property taxes by 44%. And so, again, fair taxes, additional revenue, putting into public education, lowering not only property taxes, but more importantly, doing right by our kids.
So for those local forms of government, that would look like them being able to maybe create a fire district or increase their innkeeper's tax or something like that?
Or a state tax, yeah. But right now, local governments don't always have the local control that I think the majority party talks about. Removing state preemption so that local governments are able to better meet the needs of their communities, individual communities, that it isn't all a statewide, statewide. I think our local governments often know better what their local communities need.
Not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Precisely.
Democratic Socialist candidates, you guys take a lot of heat on the internet and the media in general. How do you plan to appeal to more traditional voters rather than just the youth vote, which does have a high turnout rate here in Wisconsin, but not as high as maybe older voters who, traditionally lean a little more conservative?
I think in this moment, we are seeing many people join our coalition across generations, political ideology, and geographies. And I think that we are listening to the people, and many are telling us they are ready for real change. And I think that we are presenting not only an alternative and a solution that matches the growth of the problems when it comes to income inequality, growing, corporate wealth, that this isn't just about democratic socialism appealing to the young, but this is about democratic socialists, and being a democratic socialist, I'm focused on organizing people in making sure that they are excited about participating in politics again, because they are demanding something different and they have a politician and a candidate that's responding to that.
What do you say to people who say socialism's never worked before?
Well, I'm a democratic socialist fighting for democratic socialist policies where we feed our kids, where you can afford health care, where you can afford to buy a home, open a business, and that the government actually works for you and ordinary people and not the corporations and the wealthiest first.
Overall, why should people vote for you, Francesca Hong, to be the Democratic nominee for governor?
Because I am the candidate that is building the broadest coalition where we are a multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-faith, and we need everyone engaged right now to win a democratic trifecta and to build a government that is a force of good. I'm the candidate that is unafraid to govern by putting people first and put what is politically uncomfortable. I'll put that ahead of what is politically convenient to those who have held power before.
Francesca Hong, Democratic candidate for governor. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.